Think about it. Every hiring decision is a choice that can make or break a team, a culture, and even an entire company. So how do we make the right choice? Hi, I'm Dr. Mickey, and welcome to Inside the Mind of Hiring. Here we'll uncover the psychology and strategy behind effective hiring. Because the right fit isn't just about skill or experience. It's about understanding people, their motivations, their strengths, and the shadows of their shortcomings. Together, we'll tackle the tough questions. How do we look beyond bias? How do we find the qualities that make people not just qualified hires, but the right hires? This is about identifying leaders who drive success, lift morale, and actualize a company's vision. Inside the Mind of Hiring starts now.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this amazing journey with the most incredible Dr. Mickey Fineberg. And by the way, I could spend the entire 30 minutes talking about his credentials, but here's what I want to say to all of you. One of the most challenging things that people face right now and have been facing is that job offer. How do you stand out in a crowd? You see, Dr. Mickey has been helping organizations and individuals and groups understand what they have to develop, how they can be put in a position to be the best candidate. And so what do you need to know? How do you take that leap ahead of everybody else you see waiting outside that interview office and come in and get the job? Today, we're talking about the job seekers special, rising from the crowd to an offer. Yeah, not just rising from the crowd to the next interview, but the offer. And what that does is it puts you in a highly prestigious negotiating place, right, Dr. Mickey?
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Look, let's start to talk about this. I mean, I can't tell you, I've done more interviews about people that are trying to wrap their minds around creating tools to help people do this. But when push comes to shove, all of those leave out the human element. They leave things out. They leave things that are so commonsensical, but nobody ever teaches you, right? You know, you go to school, you never learn. So let's talk about
Things
this.
you don't learn in school.
You don't learn it in school, but you're the guy, you're Dr. Mickey. You're the one the companies come to. You're the one that helps them out. So you have insider information. So let's talk about this for a minute. You know, what is it coming out of the gate when we're thinking about this? What is a day in the life? You get the call. You got to show up.
Right.
You realize your shoes are not shine. No, I don't know. But what does that look like? Whether you're a CEO of HR or you're an individual.
You're a person that's looking for a candidate, you're a candidate, or are you a candidate looking for that role?
See, that's why you're doing this. I'm not. Because, I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? All of those different pieces are so interrelated. And one really has to know sort of the other. So let's talk about what's involved. What's involved with coming out of the gate and setting the stage for how this looks for people?
Well, people hiring managers are looking for hard skills in many regards. They're looking for hard skills and experiences that relate to the job that they're hiring for, but they're also looking for what we call soft skills and abilities. And what I mean, they're the ones that differentiate a candidate's ability or capacity to make a difference enough in that interview, or if they're assessed for a job, to be able to get that offer that they really want. And the attributes that are soft, they're really the harder ones, actually. And it revolves around a willingness to learn or intellectual curiosity, your communication effectiveness, your collaboration ability, your influence, and influence not just the people that are reporting to you are customers, but your ability to influence well, you don't have direct authority with customers either, but where you don't have direct authority, like your peers and your boss, or maybe your suppliers, where they're not reporting to you, but you have to influence them. And their employers are looking for people with critical thinking abilities, which is not, and you can test for that as well with aptitude assessments of various kinds, but they're looking for people that can think integratively, they can think systemically, they can boil down a lot of complex information or divergent information into fairly simple terms that people that can understand.
Yeah.
And they're also looking for adaptability, people that can handle change. Nobody handles change real well, but they're looking for people that can adapt to change, and they're looking for resilience. If you get whacked, can you come back relatively quickly and get back on the horse, so to speak?
Yeah.
And as always, the employers are looking for ethical values. Do you say what you say you're going to do is what you do, and do you tell the truth in what you say? And various issues like that surround that. Of course, the things that surround communication and influence are soft skills related to empathy, finesse, but being direct, tolerance, and that all comes out in verbal and nonverbal demeanor. You got to be on, when you're looking for a job, whatever level that is, or whatever hard skill base that is, because there's a lot going on in IT. We know that. If you're looking for a job, you really have to be not just yourself, which is important. You have to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Really.
And let's give everybody a state of affairs about where we are. I always like to start out a series like the series we're doing by saying, why are we even talking about this? Well, let's share some statistics on this if we could, because I think if we tell people where we are, kind of the state of affairs, then folks would understand why this is a bigger conversation than most people think. And I really want to also appeal to the parents of, job and hiring has no age boundary. It affects everybody. It's whether you are in the younger group of people or the midlife change, or you're a little bit more seasoned and experienced. Across the board, the name of the game has been changing for a while. But where are we? Give us some stats on what are some of the pain points? Where are we with people and companies?
Well, one of the things that 9 out of 10 hiring managers are saying is that they're reporting difficulty finding the right talent. So people are swinging the bat, but hiring managers are not really seeing the right talent enough, or certainly not enough that suits them. In 2025, 52% of hiring managers are going to hire people to support business growth. About 43% are going to hire people to replace people that have left their companies at this point.
Yeah.
Job openings were pretty darn plentiful in 2023 and 2024, or earlier in 2024. It's not that way now, but job openings are still pretty good. But job seekers need to know that employers can now be a little more selective than they have been. So it's no longer a free agent type of mentality as it was relatively recently. So people, if they're laid off, if they quit, if they're fired, you're not going to find jobs that quickly right now in today's environment. Things might change in 2025, toward the end of 2025, but a lot of experts are mixed on that prediction. Some are saying there'll be a lot more opportunity again, like early, just in the recent past, but some, just as many, are saying there won't be, and it could even be more restrictive.
Yeah. And let's talk about the match and alignment here. Because while that seems to be what's happening on the organizational side, isn't part of the crevice or the crack sort of that shows up is between this is what the company wants, but now we're seeing job seekers that have a little bit different deal with what they're looking for, right? I
Sure.
mean, so let's talk about, what job seekers are doing, because this enters into the mix of how you get that alignment, right?
Right. Well, job seekers, we'll talk about what they want the most, above 90%, and this is kind of, and when I look at these stats, I think things haven't really changed, but job seekers are looking for positive work-life balance, over 90%. They're looking for job security, over 90%. Interest in the work. They want to be interested in the work they're doing. They want to be enriched by it. They want higher salaries. They want better benefits. They want a good company culture to work in. They want a positive company culture. They want flex hours, and for some people, and they want opportunities for career growth. Interestingly, they're still concerned about working remotely if they can, but that's dropped to less than 70% now. And in 3 years, that won't be there unless it won't be there in 3 years, remote working like it was in the pandemic. It's just going to come back to having to come to, returning to the office, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's fascinating. We're talking about that because the world is going to become digitally exponentially enhanced in 3 years. And yet here we have this can I call it an old school model? I don't know if it's an old school model or not, but it's a model that was set up in the 50s. But that model represented very different things then. Today's world really pushes you as a job seeker to not just understand some things, but as an employee to understand who you're interviewing. And that's what assessment is. But let's talk about a scenario. Like you're being interviewed for a job, right? It reports to the CEO. Here you are, you come in. Let's drop that scenario out for people and see what they would do. I'll tell you what not to do after we're done. But let's drop that out. Here you are, right? You're the job seeker.
Yeah, so you're interviewing for a job. You've had 2 days, maybe a full day of interviews with key individuals in the company, including the CEO, who you're going to report to. You're interviewed by the senior management team in small groups or even in a large group of senior managers. They're all interviewing you at once. You're interviewed perhaps by people that might report to you or receive your services. Let's say you're an HR executive. So you might be interviewed by them. And you may take some preliminary screening, but at the end of the second day or first day, the CEO comes, you meet with the CEO again, and he says, or she says, hey, everything really looked good. How was your experience? And of course, you're positive about the experience that you had. And so then the CEO says, well, you went through a lot, but we'd like you to take one more step. We'd like you to be interviewed by our business psychologist. And that person's going to interview you, give you some standardized tests of personality as one last step in this process. And the question is, well, what would you do or say if you're thinking about getting an offer at that point? You've weathered the storm, so to speak, but now you have to do this one other step. So what would you think or feel about that? Well, a lot of people would be scared. You have to sit down with a psychologist. They might not show it, but they might be a little bit anxious about that. Actually, there are some people that would refuse.
Yeah, right. I was just going to ask you that. There's some people that just won't do it.
Some people that just won't do it. The majority will, and the majority that will feel somewhat anxious about what that's going to be about. That's going to be about. And typically when that occurs, it's a combination of the psychologist interviewing you and taking standardized personality, style, and attitude tests.
Yeah.
And in some cases, um, part of my interview is a critical thinking assessment, but you may also take them aptitude tests or basic skills tests that I might deliver or your employee might directly administer,
Yeah.
or prospective employer might directly administer. But it's it used to be a full day with the psychologist, but now it's only a couple hours on Zoom, generally speaking,
Yeah.
and about an hour and a half to take. Maybe what I do is I administer four. They're actually self-administered by you. You go online and we give you access, and you take four fairly well-known personality assessments if you've been in the industry, particularly if you've been around human resources.
Yeah.
So that may take an hour and a half. So it's not as intense in terms of time, but the experience is still pretty intense.
And I want to go through this with people because that's why Dr. Mickey is here. And for those of you out there, I want to make sure you know how to find out more about Dr. Mickey for sure. There's no question about, by the way, the depth and the breadth of what he does. Delta Consultants with an S.com. Go ahead and find out. But I want to go through this a little bit, to just say, look, folks, this is what you might expect. Here you are. You've said yes. You might have said yes and started crying, but you've said yes. And so there are certain things that you should know in how to proceed with this. What are some of the things that folks should know, right? How much is involved, how much time, and how can they prepare?
Right. It's about the interview is two hours, and I typically include a critical thinking test that involves practical reasoning, conceptual or practical reasoning is like tactical thinking. Conceptual reasoning kind of relates to strategic thinking. And I also throw some think on your feet math problems, basic arithmetic questions that you try to do in your head. That's the way I do it. But some of those aptitude tests can be paper pencil. But when I do the interview, a lot of my interview relates to, I ask you philosophic questions. What do you, if you're, let's say, applying for a senior HR job or a senior IT job, well, what's your philosophy about HR? What's your offer? How do you think about the way an IT department should be delivered, or the way, IT should be conducted and delivered for the company that, where you're running that group. And it's important to have a way of thinking about the job that you're doing. If it's a leadership job, it's important to have a way of thinking or philosophy about how you lead. Do you direct people in a nice way? Do you let them participate in the decision-making process? To what extent do you do that? Or are there circumstances where you don't let them participate in decisions? Tell me what you think. I'm very, and one of the things that I do is ask a lot of questions and shut up and then wait for the answer. Okay. I believe in asking situational questions. That's where you may not have experience, but a situational question is, how would you do something?
Right.
How would you do something? How would you approach a peer who is resistant? But I may ask it in behavioral terms. When have you talked a peer into doing something they really didn't want to do? Give me the circumstance, describe the person to me. What was their position? What did you do and what was the outcome?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that question. I have to tell you, this is interesting because you're not telling them how to answer the question.
No.
What you're saying, tell me about the situation. Whenever I've asked a question like that, I'm going to take a guess. In my career, about 80% for sports analogies, 80% came back with, this is, and so people don't know, are you looking for this, or can I give you an answer, Dr. Mickey, that maybe is not about workplace, maybe about the job? See, these are the potholes that people fill in, right?
Right.
If you're being asked a work situation like we do here, we ask you, you're a producer, you're at the board. Oh, screen goes blank. What's the first thing you do? And if your answer isn't check the cable, well, we're like, oopsie, right?
Right, right. It's critical. Yeah.
But let's take a look at this, because the flip side of this is the employer is going to be looking for something. They're going to be
Right.
looking for, what is the answer you gave me? Right?
Right. Yeah. Well, um, I one thing I don't like is a lot of superlative cliches that people tend to use. Like I relentlessly focus on things. Well, I know you when you focus, it's probably relentless. I don't need the descriptor. But and sports analogies are nice, but I wouldn't overplay that. Play them, as you mentioned, Dr. Pat. Um, but I like to hear questions, answers that I know are meaningful, relevant to the question, that I know are effective ways to think or effective ways to act. And if I ask you a behavioral question, like how do you handle, tell me about a performance problem that you had to handle. I'd like to see a positive outcome to that. Not that the person doesn't. When you handle performance problems, people that can't really change, they don't change. This is a good example of that. This is what I did. This is what I tried. Person didn't change. I ultimately had to let them go, or they quit and found something new. It's always much better to hear a positive outcome to making an attempt that way.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's hard to get although the reality is there are some hiring managers that want to know if you've got the gumption to take it to the point where you know that you either hold them or you fold them. And sometimes you hear these stories about people that have tried to work with somebody for like 3 years.
Yes. And nothing happens.
And the new manager comes in and said, what are you doing? But
Right.
all of this, people have to get ready, because the reason we're talking about this is one of several shows we're doing. This is a new world, and we don't know what we don't know about it.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
You mentioned empathy, and I know we're
Yes.
going to talk about this in other shows, but you better understand what that means.
Right.
You really
Right.
have to understand that.
Yeah.
And then you have to know what to do with it. You're the last person on the totem pole to be the last person that manager or whoever it is talking to that day.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're the last one. They're thinking, I want to go play pickleball. And here you are. Right? No, this, this is true.
Right.
But there are things you can learn. I mean, I'll never forget this. This was me, though, on a day, and this is in my HR, and I'm the last, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go. I'm late for my softball, right?
Right. Right.
And the guy shows up, and he looks at me, and he says, Pat, he says, Ms. Basili, I know I'm the last person here today. I can only imagine what it's been like for you. Talking to person over person over person, and here I am showing up, and I may or may not have that shiny nickel that you're looking for. But I'll tell you, I really appreciate you seeing me this late in the day, and I know how daunting this may be for you, because it is for me.
That's a great example of
that.
Right, sure. Yeah, if a candidate, sometimes, and it's really great when candidates tune into me, as you're saying, they're tuning into you. This has to be challenging. There's a high premium on recommending people that you recommend and they fail in the job. And there's got to be a high, premium on people that you don't recommend and they do great. Well, I don't mind that, but it's like the decisions and the recommendations that I make have a high impact on businesses.
Yeah.
And if somebody recognizes that, even though they're the subject of those decisions that I'm making, and I'm recommending them, or perhaps not even recommending them, who knows? But if they can show that, they're certainly displaying some empathy, and that's really important in business today. Extremely important.
Yeah, especially given the statistics. Dr. Mickey, there's so much more we're going to talk about. This is just the tip of the iceberg today. But through this process, I think one of the go-tos messages are, please do not be surprised if you're asked to take an assessment, because
Absolutely.
how are you going to get from where you are to that offer, right?
Yeah, that might be, it's very important to be positive about it. Very important to be positive. And it's even, you could even say something, can I get something out of this experience? Whether I get the job or not, can I talk with Dr. Mickey about the results? Because you can. A lot of times you can. Only 5% or less people ask for a feedback on assessment, whether they get the job or not. And it's a real learning opportunity.
Yeah. We're going to hear more from you, Dr. Mickey. What's your personal message? What do you want to leave us with today? And thank you so much for opening up the door for us to have ongoing conversations about this.
Well, the closing message is be on your game, be in the moment, always be in the moment. Don't relax. Even though you look relaxed, don't relax. Be in the moment. Be aware of your surroundings, answer the questions asked, and be the best version of yourself. I'll say that again. That's important. Just don't be yourself, be the best version of yourself.
Dr. Mickey Fineberg, everybody, please go and find out more about what Dr. Mickey is talking about, his organization, deltaconsultants.com. And then in future show, we're going to be able to collect your questions because we want to know, what is it about you that you don't know about how to become the one that gets the offer? Thank you, Dr. Mickey. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Pat. And thank
by
you,
the way,
audience.
And by the way, I did hire that guy.
Great.
We'll see y'all next. We'll see y'all next time.
Yeah.
You have been listening to Inside the Mind of Hiring with me, Dr. Mickey Fineberg. Tune in the first and third Tuesday at 11 on Transformation Talk Radio to discover the psychology of making successful hiring decisions. In each episode, hiring managers and HR pros will learn how to leverage assessments and other key screening sources and avoid common pitfalls. Job seekers will gain insight into successfully presenting themselves. For more information on assessing people for mission-critical jobs and on career assessment and coaching, visit deltaconsultants.com and my LinkedIn profile. If you'd like to write me personally, it's Mickey, Mickey, @deltaconsultants.com.